"You are not afraid of me, then?" asked the young man again with his light laugh. She wondered a moment, and then, "We are not afraid, here," she said. "Ah, comme vous devez avoir raison!" cried the young man, looking all round him, appreciatively. It was the first time that Gertrude had heard so many words of French spoken. They gave her something of a sensation. Her companion followed her, watching, with a certain excitement of his own, this tall, interesting-looking girl, dressed in her clear, crisp muslin. He paused in the hall, where there was a broad white staircase, with a white balustrade. "What a pleasant house!" he said. "It's lighter inside than it is out." "It's pleasanter here," said Gertrude, and she led the way into the parlor, a high, clean, rather empty-looking room. Here they stood looking at each other, the young man smiling more than ever, Gertrude, very serious, trying to smile. "I don't believe you know my name," he said. "I am called Felix Young. Your father is my uncle. My mother was his half-sister, and older than he." "Yes," said Gertrude, "and she turned Roman Catholic and married in Europe." "I see you know," said the young man. "She married and she died. Your father's family didn't like her husband. They called him a foreigner. But he was not. My poor father was born in Sicily, but his parents were American." "In Sicily?" Gertrude murmured. "It is true," said Felix Young, "that they had spent their lives in Europe, but they were very patriotic, and so are we." "And you are Sicilian," said Gertrude. "Sicilian, no. Let's see. I was born at a little place, a dear little place in France. My sister was born at Vienna." "So you are French," said Gertrude. "Heaven forbid!" cried the young man. Gertrude's eyes were fixed upon him almost insistently. He began to laugh again. "I can easily be French, if that will please you." "You are a foreigner of some sort," said Gertrude. "Of some sort, yes, I suppose so. But who can say of what sort? I don't think we have ever had occasion to settle the question. You know there are people like that. About their country, their religion, their profession. They can't tell." Gertrude stood there gazing. She had not asked him to sit down. She had never heard of people like that. She wanted to hear. "Where do you live?" she asked. "They can't tell that either," said Felix. "I am afraid you will think they are little better than vagabonds. I have lived anywhere, everywhere. I really think I have lived in every city in Europe." Gertrude gave a little long, soft exhalation. It made the young man smile at her again, and his smile made her blush a little. To take refuge from blushing, she asked him if, after his long walk, he was not hungry or thirsty. Her hand was in her pocket. She was fumbling with the little key that her sister had given her. "Ah, my dear young lady," he said, clasping his hands a little, "if you could give me in charity a glass of wine!" Gertrude gave a smile and a little nod, and went quickly out of the room. Presently she came back with a very large decanter in one hand and a plate in the other, on which was placed a big, round cake with a frosted top. Gertrude, in taking the cake from the closet, had had a moment of acute consciousness that it composed the refection of which her sister had thought that Mr. Brand would like to partake. Her kinsman from across the seas was looking at the pale, high-hung engravings. When she came in he turned and smiled at her, as if they had been old friends meeting after a separation. "You wait upon me yourself?" he asked. "I am served like the gods." She had waited upon a great many people, but none of them had ever told her that. The observation added a certain lightness to the step with which she went to a little table where there were some curious red glasses covered with little gold sprigs, which Charlotte used to dust every morning with her own hands. Gertrude thought the glasses very handsome, and it was a pleasure to her to know that the wine was good. It was her father's famous Madeira. Felix Young thought it excellent. He wondered why he had been told that there was no wine in America. She cut him an immense triangle out of the cake, and again she thought of Mr. Brand. Felix sat there with his glass in one hand and his huge morsel of cake in the other, eating, drinking, smiling, talking. "I am very hungry," he said. "I am not at all tired. I am never tired, but I am very hungry." "You must stay to dinner," said Gertrude. "At 2 o'clock. They will all have come back from church. You will see the others." "Who are the others?" asked the young man. "Describe them all." "You will see for yourself. It is you that must tell me. Now about your sister." "My sister is the Baroness Münster," said Felix. On hearing that his sister was a baroness, Gertrude got up and walked about slowly, in front of him. She was silent a moment. She was thinking of it. "Why didn't she come too?" she asked. "She did come. She is in Boston at the hotel." "We will go and see her," said Gertrude, looking at him. "She begs you will not," the young man replied. "She sends you her love. She sent me to announce her. She will come and pay her respects to your father." Gertrude felt herself trembling again. A Baroness Münster, who sent a brilliant young man to announce her, who was coming, as the Queen of Sheba came to Solomon, to pay her respects, to quiet Mr. Wentworth. Such a personage presented herself to Gertrude's vision with the most effective unexpectedness. For a moment she hardly knew what to say. "When will she come?" she asked at last. "As soon as you will allow her. Tomorrow. She is very impatient," answered Felix, who wished to be agreeable. "Tomorrow, yes," said Gertrude. She wished to ask more about her, but she hardly knew what could be predicated of a Baroness Münster. "Is she married?" Felix had finished his cake and wine. He got up, fixing upon the young girl his bright, expressive eyes. "She is married to a German prince, Prince Adolf of Silberstadt-Schreckenstein. He is not the reigning prince, he is a younger brother." Gertrude gazed at her informant. Her lips were slightly parted. "Is she a princess?" she asked at last. "Oh, no," said the young man. "Her position is rather a singular one. It's a morganatic marriage." "Morganatic?" These were new names and new words to poor Gertrude. "That's what they call a marriage, you know, contracted between a scion of a ruling house and a common mortal. They made Eugenia a baroness, poor woman. But that was all they could do. Now they want to dissolve the marriage. Prince Adolf, between ourselves, is a ninny. But his brother, who is a clever man, has plans for him. Eugenia, naturally enough, makes difficulties. Not, however, that I think she cares much. She's a very clever woman. I'm sure you'll like her. But she wants to bother them. Just now everything is en l'air." The cheerful, off-hand tone in which her visitor related this darkly romantic tale seemed to Gertrude very strange. But it seemed also to convey a certain flattery to herself, a recognition of her wisdom and dignity. She felt a dozen impressions stirring within her, and presently the one that was uppermost found words. "They want to dissolve her marriage?" she asked. "So it appears." "And against her will?" "Against her right." "She must be very unhappy," said Gertrude. Her visitor looked at her, smiling. He raised his hand to the back of his head and held it there a moment. "So she says," he answered. "That's her story. She told me to tell it you." "Tell me more," said Gertrude. "No, I will leave that to her. She does it better." Gertrude gave her little excited sigh again. "Well, if she is unhappy," she said, "I am glad she has come to us." She had been so interested that she failed to notice the sound of a footstep in the portico, and yet it was a footstep that she always recognized. She heard it in the hall, and then she looked out of the window. They were all coming back from church, her father, her sister and brother, and their cousins, who always came to dinner on Sunday. Mr. Brand had come in first. He was in advance of the others because, apparently, he was still disposed to say what she had not wished him to say an hour before. He came into the parlor looking for Gertrude. He had two little books in his hand. On seeing Gertrude's companion